enhancement is the process of using aura to boost the natural abilities of objects or one's body. Enhancers are the types who can ramp up their physical attacks and defenses to superhuman levels, making them perfect for up-close melee battles. Through the water divination test, an enhancer increases the amount of water in the glass. According to Hisoka's personality analysis, enhancers are usually pretty simple and determined. They don't lie, are super straightforward, and tend to act on their feelings. They're often focused on their goals and rely on straightforward, no-nonsense Nen abilities to get things done. Therefore, the core of most enhancers' abilities is simple, raw power. A lot of them channel their Nen into supercharging their physical abilities, letting them hit harder, defend better, or even heal faster. A skilled enhancer can even strengthen their body enough to make themselves tougher than a tank and hit with force equal to a missile. Uvogin, for example, makes his body as tough as steel and cranks up his attack power with his own aura to use the Big Bang Impact. But enhancers aren't just about brute strength, they can apply this boosting effect to weapons as well, like in the case of Nobunaga and Guido. It's also the most balanced Nen type, in the sense that it lets users focus equally on offense and defense, often without needing fancy techniques. That's why many enhancers rely on straightforward, powerful moves based on basic Nen techniques. Still, some enhancers go even further with more complex abilities, such as healing, which Kurapika used against Uvogin, or enhancing someone else's growth, like in the case with Bill's Arigoron. Gon's Jajanken Rock is the perfect example of enhancement in its simplest form, where he channels his aura into his fist so he can boost it to pack an insane punch. But in his fight against Neferpito, he does the unthinkable by enhancing his body to the point where he ages years in moments, in order to reach his peak physical form. This gives him immense strength that comes with a heavy price, as he loses all his Nen afterwards. This also could be due to the Nen restriction and not enhancement in itself. It's also worth mentioning that Nen types overlap, or at least they can. Enhancement meshes well with Emission and Transmutation, but not so much with other Nen types, especially Specialization, with 0% compatibility. For example, Isaac Netero is one of the strongest enhancers in the series, but his ultimate move, the 100 type Guanyin Bodhisattva, combines Emission, Manipulation, and maybe even Transmutation. Netero likely uses enhancement to boost its speed and hand movements to godlike levels, which even Meruem struggled to keep up with at first. However, in most cases, an ability created using affinities outside of enhancement will always be weaker than their original affinity, and this will be the case with the 6 main categories we'll be discussing. Transmutation is the process of changing one's own aura to copy different properties, like elements, substances, or even animals. Through the water divination test, a transmuter changes the taste of the water. Personality-wise, they're known to be quirky, deceptive, and a bit unpredictable. They might quickly lose interest in things they once loved, and often hide their true nature behind a mask. Even when they don't, they tend to keep their real intentions secret. Transmuters usually come up with Nen abilities that reflect their unpredictable nature, and while enhancement focuses on straightforward power, transmutation demands creativity or some intense training to master a versatile and tricky Hatsu. Transmuters can make their aura take on traits of natural elements or man-made things, but they aren't limited to just solid objects. Take Killua for example, who can change his aura to mimic electricity. With it, he can shock enemies up close or from a distance, by channeling his electricity through his yo-yos or shooting out lightning strikes. As a transmuter, Killua in particular has dual affinity towards enhancement, which is something we'll be talking about in a bit. And this is because transmutation is most compatible with enhancement and conjuration. In Godspeed mode, Killua also applies enhancement skills to boost his reaction time and allow him to constantly move at full speed. In the same manner which Killua's aura takes the properties of electricity, Feitan does the same by transmuting his aura into a ball of scorching fire that mimics the properties of a miniature sun. Transmuters can also tweak their aura to give it certain traits, instead of copying a substance exactly. Hisoka's bungee gum is a great example, since, and this isn't widely known by most people, Hisoka's bungee gum has the stretchy and sticky properties of both rubber and gum, but way more durable than either. Hisoka uses this ability to set traps, deflect attacks, and create flail-like weapons, making it a nightmare to predict. Another notable transmuter is Machi, who turns her aura into strings, which she uses to stitch up body parts back together, connecting everything from nerves and even bone. Biscuit Kruger is probably the most unique transmuter in the series, as she mostly applies her transmutation skills to change her bulky appearance into a smaller one, all while concealing her true power. Her main ability though, which involves summoning a Nen beast that heals and revitalizes people, employs both transmutation and manipulation, with the latter being the least compatible Nen type with this affinity. And really quick, if you guys enjoy straight to the point informative anime and manga content like this, then make sure to subscribe and turn those notifications on, because we post a video covering various anime topics just like this on this channel at least once every 5 days, so we'll have you covered. But anyway, emission is the process of separating aura from the body, which makes it perfect for long-range attacks and abilities that last over time. Through the water divination test, an emitter changes the color of the water. Personality-wise, they're known to be impatient, quick to anger, and not very detail-oriented. Like enhancers, they can be impulsive, but emitters tend to cool off and forget things more quickly. Emitters often use their affinity to fire off aura as projectiles or beams at high speeds for mid or long-range attacks. Normally, aura loses its strength quickly when it leaves the body, but skilled emitters can send their aura far away and keep it strong and functional for a long time. Though emission is mostly used for attacking, it has some other interesting uses as well. It can help the user propel themselves, or cast effects from other Nen types remotely. More advanced techniques include Nav's teleportation ability and Leorio's remote punch, that phases through any surface until it hits the intended target. The only downside with emission is that the more aura being sent out means the less distance it can cover before weakening, but again, for the outliers this is not necessarily the case. Meruem's Rage Blast and Photon are great examples of emission in action. He fires explosive blasts of aura from his arm, and even spreads tiny dots of his aura into the air to gather information about whatever they touch. He's so precise with the latter ability that he can even tell if someone's lying. Gon's Jajanken paper is a more straightforward example of emission, where he simply shoots an aura projectile from his hand. Other notable emitters include Pokel with his rainbow arrows, Razor with his aura ball, Zeno with his aura blast, and Silva with his explosive orbs, though Silva also mixes in some transmutation. Emitters are most compatible with enhancement and manipulation, which helps them expand their abilities. Conjuration is a versatile Nen type that allows users to create actual physical objects from their aura. It's often confused with transmutation, because both involve molding aura into a particular form, but the key difference is that while transmutation changes aura into a certain trait by mimicking those desired properties, conjuration actually materializes aura into a real physical object. Through the water divination test, a conjurer adds impurities to the water in the glass. As for their personality, conjurers are usually pretty serious, high-strung, and cautious. They're observant and logical, always analyzing things and rarely falling for tricks, which gives them a big edge in tricky situations. The types of things conjurers can create can vary, and setting limitations on what they conjure can make their creations even stronger than the real-life version. Conjurers go through a lot of training to visualize what they want to create, but once they've mastered it, they can conjure or dispel their objects in the blink of an eye. The durability of the conjured object is usually a sign of how skilled the conjurer is, though placing conditions on the object can make it stronger. Take Kurapika's chain gel for example. This unbreakable chain is able to trap a powerhouse like Uvogin because Kurapika added the condition that it can only be used on members of the Phantom Troop, and if he breaks that rule he dies. Kite also sets a condition on his ability to rely on his crazy slots and randomly picking a numbered weapon without being able to choose which weapon to conjure. Conjurers can also create things with special abilities, like Shizuku's vacuum cleaner for example, that can suck up anything that's not alive or made of Nen, and Abingane, who can conjure a Nen beast that can exercise Nen curses. What's interesting about conjured objects is that they can stick around even if the conjurer is far away, or doesn't realize they're still there. Knuckle, for example, conjures a Nen beast called Hakuware that sticks to an opponent and racks up interest on loaned aura until they go bankrupt, forcing them into Zetsu. The indestructible mascot even sticks around after Knuckle is far away. The same also applies to Cortupi's conjured replicas, that can linger on for 24 hours, even when he's not around. Conjuration is also compatible with transmutation, and least compatible with emission and specialization. Manipulation gives the user control over both living and non-living things, including aura constructs. Through the water divination test, a manipulator simply moves the leaf floating on the water. As for their personality, manipulators are often logical and argumentative. They go at their own pace, and are protective over their loved ones. However, when it comes to chasing their own goals, they don't care much about others' opinions. In combat, manipulation can be a huge advantage, because the manipulator can take control of an enemy as soon as certain conditions are met. The user's aura mixes with the target's aura, though it's not always obvious. Skilled manipulators can even force aura nodes to open on non-Nen users, but they can't take control of a target that's already being manipulated by someone else. Manipulators are great at channeling their aura into objects, often using a medium they've been connected to for years, an example being Illumi's needles. In a lot of cases, they can control things across long distances, like how Moral controls his smoke troopers, without needing a mission-type Nen. The amount of control they have usually depends on conditions they set. If the conditions are tricky or put the user at risk, they can control the target more effectively. They can use 4 main methods in controlling other people. Soliciting manipulation leaves the target's free will intact, but conditions them to follow the manipulator's lead under certain circumstances. One example would be the needle that Illumi used on Killua, which forced him to run away in fear when facing stronger enemies. Coercive manipulation gives total control over the victim's mind and body. Illumi's needle people are a prime example, which is an ability he performs by sticking needles into his target's heads so he can fully control multiple individuals, both living and dead. Shalnark's black voice also fits this category. Pseudo-coercive manipulation either takes over the victim's body or traps them in a situation where they have no choice but to follow orders, like when Momose's guardian spirit beast controlled Sayard to kill his comrades. Diffusive induction manipulation weakly influences the emotions of a large group of people, like Prince Salah's guardian spirit beast, which manipulates others to see him favorably. While most manipulators usually focus on controlling opponents, some prefer to control objects instead, such as Kaluto, who controls Nen-imbued pieces of paper to use as a weapon or a surveillance device. Some manipulators also prefer to control animals instead, such as how Squalla does with dogs and Ponzu with bees. Manipulators can lean towards a mission, but their weakest affinities are transmutation and specialization. Specialization is the most unique and flexible Nen type, covering abilities that don't fit into the other 5 categories, making it pretty vague how they actually function. Because of this, specialists tend to have abilities with more steps and conditions than the other Nen types we discussed, which also lets them bypass typical Nen rules. A specialist water divination test seem to be unique to each individual, reflecting their personalities, unlike the other Nen types, with a predictable outcome. We've seen a few examples of this sprinkled throughout the series. Kurapika, for example, turned the water a different color and made the leaf spin. Neferpito's aura dried out the leaf and made it crumble, and Kakin Prince Saradnik made the water boil and release a nasty smell. Specialization is most compatible with conjuration and manipulation, and least effective when it comes to enhancement. Specialist abilities can vary greatly. Some can affect the user's own Hatsu, like Kurapika in his Emperor time, where he can use 100% proficiency in all Nen types. Others give the user access to knowledge that would otherwise be impossible to get, like Neon's fortune telling, or Pakunoda's ability to read memories of those she touches, or even Saradnik's parallel future, which lets him, see the future. Because specialist abilities are so varied, it's harder for an opponent to exploit weaknesses, even when a specialist Nen type is revealed. Unlike other Nen types, how specialists develop their abilities is kind of a mystery. Some, like Neon, get abilities based on lifelong desires, while others, like Saradnik, develop them randomly after learning about Nen. Other notable specialists include Chrollo, who can steal others' Nen abilities through his conjured book, and then there's Aluka with her wish-granting powers, although it's unclear if her abilities are even related to Nen, or just an entirely different kind of ability. In Nen, most people only have one natural affinity, but some users can be close enough to another category that they can learn their secondary affinity faster than usual. These are users that have dual affinity. This doesn't mean they have 2 main Nen types, but it does mean that they can master the second one almost as quickly as their natural affinity. They still have a primary type, and the second one won't be as strong, but they can use it more efficiently than someone with no connection to that category. In a memo released by Yoshihiro Tagashi, he categorized various characters into their Nen types, with some characters leaning towards their secondary affinity. A few of them are placed right in between 2 categories, marked by a halfway point, and labeled as an in-between Nen user. One well-known example is Killua. He's a natural transmuter, but Togashi placed him in between transmutation and enhancement. So Killua is considered a transmuter enhancer, meaning he can pick up enhancement skills just as easily as he learns transmutation. As mentioned earlier, Killua uses transmutation to alter his aura to mimic the properties of electricity, but he also uses enhancement to enhance his speed and boost his reaction time and Godspeed. Though his enhancement skills would only be 80% as strong compared to his transmutation abilities at 100%. Another example is Melody, who's labeled as an emitter manipulator. As a natural emitter, she channels her aura through music to heal listeners from fatigue and sickness. And when she really pours herself into her music, she can even manipulate the listener's emotions and create illusions of a blooming meadow, making people lose touch with reality for 3 minutes. This kind of effect obviously leans heavily into manipulation, even if it's brief. Franklin from the Phantom Troop is also an emitter, but he has a secondary affinity towards enhancement. His main ability is shooting aura bullets from his fingers, but to fire them with devastating power, he taps into Enhancement to boost each bullet's speed and strength. Of course, the most notable in-between Nen user would be Kurapika. He's a natural Conjurer, but when his eyes turn scarlet, he becomes a Specialist. What's even more impressive is that when he's in a Specialist mode, called Emperor Time, he can use all types of Nen with 100% efficiency. While his base level in other categories remain the same, his force and accuracy in any ability jumps to 100%. So while his emission level, his weakest affinity, remains at 40%, his emission ability increases to 100%, putting him on par with an actual emitter in this state. But this power comes with a heavy cost, as every second in Emperor Time shortens his lifespan by 1 hour. Postmortem Nen is a phenomena that occurs when a Nen user's abilities stick around and even get stronger after they die. This often happens if a user dies with a strong grudge, which causes their Nen to target whoever they hate and cling on to them, usually resulting in their death. This makes curse-type Nen abilities incredibly hard to remove, since there are fewer than 10 Nen exorcists in the world who can even try to break a curse left behind by a dead Nen user. But it's not just hatred that triggers Postmortem Nen. Any strong emotion can cause it. When Neferpito died, their ability Terpsichora still controlled their decapitated body because of their deep loyalty to Meruem. Even though they didn't see Gon as a real threat anymore, their Nen kept going after their death. Some Nen users even set up their abilities so that dying is part of how their power activates, making them way stronger in the process. One of the best examples of this is Hisoka. Manga spoilers ahead, by the way. Before dying in his fight against Chrollo, he implored his Nen ability to restart his heart and lungs after he died. Sure enough, after he was killed, his Postmortem Nen kicked in and revived him. While Hisoka used Postmortem Nen as a last resort for survival, Prince Camilla from the Kakin Empire, on the other hand, uses this concept as the core element of her Nen ability. If she's killed, a massive cat-like Nen beast appears and absorbs the life energy of her killer. The extracted life essence is then transferred to her and brings her back to life. This means she revives every time she dies, at the cost of her killer's life, making her nearly impossible to kill. Another curious case is Misha Hao, of the Ziyu family, whose job it was to dispose of the bodies of the group's victims. Her devotion to her role was so great that even after she died, her Postmortem Nen still makes her appear and clean up the bodies of anyone killed by a Ziyu member. Once she disposes of the body, she disappears again. Sometimes Postmortem Nen can also execute even if it breaks the set conditions of other abilities. A good example is the Sun and Moon in Chrollo's book. It stayed there even after its original owner died. Normally, Chrollo's Skill Hunter would lose a stolen ability when the original user dies, but this particular Postmortem Nen ability completely ignores these conditions. This also makes the Sun and Moon's marks impossible to dispel until they explode. Well, that does it for every Nen type in Hunter x Hunter. There's technically 6, but we sprinkled in these last 2 because we thought they were kind of special cases. Based on the personality test we gave for each affinity, let us know in the comments below which Nen user you would be. We're very curious to see. And after doing that, if you want to learn about every unsolved mystery in Hunter x Hunter, then make sure to click the video you see on your screen right now, and we'll see you there.